Hi guys, I'm Mohammed Javed, and this is my first ever car review. I decided to start off the channel with my own car, which is a 2002 Ford Focus ZX5, and it is a very nice car. So, starting off with the front, right, this car did have Ford's new age design philosophy, and as you can see, everything's either triangles, trapezoids, and curves. There are no harsh angles on this car like the Cadillacs, and I frankly think it looks good. Now everybody asks me why this car is green, but that is reminiscent of the Ford Focus rally car from the 2000s, and those cars also had this shade of green, at least in the back portion of the car. So this car is front wheel drive, and it is a very well handling car that does come down to mostly the front steering rack. It is shared with the 2006 Ford GT because it was the best steering rack Ford had their hands on at the time. And the rear suspension is also a very really good unit. It is an independent suspension, and Ford called it the controlled blade suspension. It was one of the first ever hot hatches, or hatchbacks in general, to have independent rear suspension. One of the first ever Ford cars to have it in this price point, and for those reasons it does handle very well. So here is the engine compartment of this car. As you can see, this is Ford's 16 valve Z-Tech engine. It is an iron block. It came with 127 horsepower from factory and 135 pound-feet of torque. And to be honest with you, at this weight range, that is enough. You don't need much more power than that. But if you always wanted more power, you could go to the aftermarket department, or you could buy yourself the SVT version of this car, which shouldn't be much more than $4 grand. Now, I will show you this. This car is belt driven, and that is so you could have 16 valves for the engine instead of 8. And to be honest with you, if you're buying one of these cars, do make sure that this is replaced, because after 100,000 miles, they do need to be replaced. They are a little bit hard to replace since you have to drop the engine down. If it hasn't been done, make sure to get something like a $500 discount on the car. So now we are at the rear end of the car, and as you can see, the taillights do have a nice 3D shape to them, and they are very high. People always ask me why that is, and that is a safety feature, since crossovers and SUVs were starting to become really popular as they are today. This is a 2002 car, and they were starting to get very popular. So those are taller cars, and you generally can't really see taillights that are down here, but you could really easily see them if they're up here, especially if you're in an SUV. So if you look up here, here is your third brake light. It's not down here, so you could see it up again, as I said before. And here is your windshield washer jet, and it just shoots washer fluid, and the rear wiper wipes it off, which is a nice feature to have. Looking inside the trunk of this car, it is a very spacious trunk, as you could see on the inside. It does have plenty of space for your grocery shopping and things like that. You do get a privacy shelf here, so if no one can see into your trunk, and you could take that off for more space. It does have this strut tower holding the trunk up so it doesn't fall onto your head. And for shorter people like me, you just reach in here and you pull the trunk down like that, and you close it like that. You have a key. You could put a keyhole in here and release it. There is an interior release for the hatch, or you could use your key fob. That is a nice feature to have on this car. So now we move on to the gas tank, or the gas cap of this car. All you have to do is walk up to it. There's no release. You put your finger in here and pull it out like that. It's very nice. Now, as you can see here on this sticker, it does give you your tire size and your tire pressures, which is a very interesting feature. I like these tiny details. They are what add up to a very nice first car. And that's interesting because usually at a gas station, they have those pumps that you could air up your tires. Well, Ford decided to put a sticker here where you're going to notice it at the gas station so you could fill up your car. And if you move in closer now, you could see that this does say Motorcraft, and that is a designer brand of Ford. If I open the cap now, you do see this very small valve in here, an aluminum looking valve, and that is so your gas does not spill. Newer Ford cars do have this feature as well, but they don't have this plastic cap, and that is a patented design by Ford, and I'm glad they have it so that you don't get any nasty spills of gasoline when you're at the gas pumps. Before we move to the other aspects of this car, I will also show you that little button in the passenger's footwell. So, see, it has a little fuel sort of graphic, and that's if, so let's say you forget to fill up your car in time and it runs out of gas, or something were to hit this car. That's an automatic turn off feature, so it turns all the electronics off so it doesn't wreck the car, and you just have to immobilize it with that button. So if it were to run out of gas, the car would usually go into shock, right? But this prevents it with a little fuse in there somewhere, and all I have to do is immobilize it with that button, and then I could drive it as usual again once I fill it up with gas. So that's also a really practical feature from Ford, which I like. Okay, so the interior of this car also has Ford's New Edge design philosophy. As you can see here, there's a big curvy line going all the way down to the doors, and it's also on this side as well. It's a pretty nice interior. As you can see, you have this faux brushed aluminum sort of deal going on. You do see the whole triangular theme in here again. You don't see... everything's either curved or it's a triangle or trapezoids. Nothing is harsh angles on this car. This was the optional radio. It had a 6-disc CD changer, and the base car had a cassette player, if you believe it or not. But this is one of the newer cars, so therefore it came with a CD player. Now, let me start this off for you. As you can see, the radio is on right now, but I press that little button. Okay, take that out. It turns off. Why is that? Well, this is actually a safety feature created by Ford back in the day to prevent this radio from being stolen. Now, moving on to the transmission. As I said before, this is the 4-speed automatic. It's a pretty comfortable automatic. The shifts aren't jolty or anything like that. It's just not a quite quick transmission, as I would say. It's not that fast, but it's not jolty on the shifts. You don't go back and forth like that as you would in some older cars with automatic transmissions, especially when they're 4 speeds. Ford concentrated a lot of engineering time into this dashboard. As you can see, the knobs are very well damped, and you could hear the valves inside the air conditioning shutting off and going towards the window and then back towards my knees or up here. And they, as I said, they're pretty well damped. They're kind of heavy, so they're really well put in. They're screwed in tight, which I like. Moving on to the air conditioning vents. Some of these older cars typically don't have their own switches to turn each individual vent off. But in this car, you can turn every individual one. Moving on to the glove box. It does have a few cool aspects, okay? As you can see, I pop my driver's manual there, and it stays in place. It's got a clip to hold it into place so it doesn't take up too much room. And it's a very big glove box. It's pretty deep, as you can see, and you could fit a lot of things. I mainly put my sunglasses and some tissues in there. This car does have cruise control, which is very nice to have. It's a nice feature to have on the highway. Most cars of this era, or some cars of this era, didn't quite all have it, but this car did, which I'm glad about. So all you have to do is press on, and then set it, and then it automatically drives at that speed. Okay, so right now the car is in my driving position, maybe a little bit more forward. As you can see, I have a lot of knee room, which is a plus from this car. I have a lot of headroom as well. I'm 5'1", but my dad, who is quite a bit taller, could fit in this car with decent headroom as well. So that's a plus from Ford. Moving on to the dome lights. You have 3 dome lights in this car, which 2 of them are your standard reading lights, and and one of them is your door light. All three are located at the front. The steering wheel on this car is adjustable. So, many cars have the feature where it goes up and down, which is pretty standard nowadays. But this car has a telescopic steering wheel, which is a plus for its time. It's not a very common feature, and I'm glad Ford put it here because it means you can have all loads of driving positions. Now I'm going to devise a little test for this coin cup. So first we're going to start off with my smartphone. It's a pretty big Samsung S7 Edge. It's a very standard smartphone in terms of size. Now let's see if it fits in here. That's a fail. It does not pass. Here is my very first Verizon cell phone. It's got a keyboard like this and everything. It's pretty cool, guys. Pop that in there. And that sort of fits. It's not a complete fail, but I would say maybe a C+. Alright. Moving on to my very first cell phone. It's a flip phone, guys. Look at this. When was the last time you saw one of these? Okay, jokes aside, this one does fit in there just barely. That would be probably like a B+. And this is a baby Focus. The baby Focus does not fit. It's worse than the cell phone. And I have a miniature Focus. This one does fit. So if you seem to be carrying either the miniature Focus or one of these in your pocket, which I don't know why you would, but hey, if you are, they fit. That's a pass. That's a pass. Okay, these are actually shared with the 2006 Ford GT. Like the steering rack, this switchgear, all of this, it's all shared with the 2005 Ford GT. So that car did have really cool light switches, but your turn signals, your wipers and things like that, they're shared. So hey, it's really cool parts shared with a really cool car. So this car does also have airbags. This was one of the very first hatchbacks in the US to get them. It has one for the driver and one for the passenger. More of the triangular trapezoid theme, as I talked about, and it's also here and on the hatch release. As you could hear it, I just popped the hatch open. Alright, as you could see, this is my driving position, and I get a heck of a lot of legroom here, and I do get this neat storage pocket. You do get heating from this car, but don't be mistaken, it comes out of two tiny little vents behind the seating mount here, over there, but they're not really visible, so you still get heating and air conditioning here, which is nice. Here's my little sister's car seat. I take her to her preschool once in a while. You know, I'm responsible. I do that sort of thing for my little sister. Jokes aside, though, you could see that one car fits all purposes. You could daily drive this car. You could use it as a family car. You could use it as a winter beater if you wanted to, because it's cheap. And it's very practical, I have to say. There are no rear headrests, but it's actually pretty good because you could just lie back here and sleep or think about whatever you wanted to. And you get pretty standard handles up here for when the driver is a maniac, which I am. And they're sprung, so they do pop back into place. And you do get two, not one, but two coat hangers. And here's a really cool fact. So this was one of Ford's first global cars. Usually with cars, you don't get them on the driver's side. Why would the driver need a handle, right? He's the one driving like a maniac. But this is here for saving, I suppose, because it was easier to just design one part that goes on all four corners, and you could see that with the coat hangers as well. One of them is on this side and the other is forward instead of back here like the other one. And that does mean that they were trying to they were trying to use the same exact part and save some money, which is cool. You can see this is a global car. Alright, you do get speakers, pretty standard ones. They do sound pretty good. I think there's a subwoofer in here back there somewhere. And it doesn't sound half bad, actually. let me show you this last feature back here, which is actually really cool. So let's say, you know, I need more space in the hatch, right? Maybe I want to put a bike back here, lawnmower back here. I don't know what you do in your free time, but hey, you might need more space, right? It's a hatchback. So, what do? You push this car seat all the way back there in my case. Then you put your hand here, and you dig this padding forward. Hey, that's pretty cool. Alright, then you see this little button. I press it, okay? Now it's down. Push this a little bit forward. Do a little bit of double hand action. And bam, that's down. And you can see into the trunk as well. This does go flat on both sides. And as I said, you could take this shelf off and you could get a lot of space back here. So I have road tripped this car before to Duluth and back from Minneapolis. It was about a 300-mile road trip. It was very fun. But that aside, I had two bikes back here, two big full-size mountain bikes, one for my dad and one for myself. You could mount them here with bungee cords, whatever you put back here. I had an inflatable boat. I had some tents and camping gear, and you know, like those lie-back chairs that you might want sometimes, right? Those are always a lot of fun. But that aside, I had plenty of space for my camping gear back here. It was a very fun trip, and this car was a great road trip car, I gotta say. And putting miles on this car won't really hurt, since gas, first of all, it doesn't use much gas. It's very efficient, which is a good feature of a first car because your parents won't allow it otherwise. And it does have a lot of space, so it's practical, so your parents will not veto this car. That's a plus. As a car enthusiast, I could tell you that two very fun things, three actually, in my opinion, are the steering wheel. You know, the steering response. This car has a very great steering feel. You know, it's hydraulic steering. The steering rack's shared with the 2006 Ford GT. That aside, shifting's a lot of fun, which this has an overdrive function, so that's close enough. And the exhaust sound. So I'm going to turn on the engine so you could hear the sound on the inside, and then he's going to go back to the exhaust, and you could hear it from there as well. So, okay. And I'm going to rev it in place a little bit. And this is not a cold start either, so the car will be fine. So that's pretty decent sound. That's not half bad. And the SVT Focus did get a better exhaust system and a little bit of engine improvements, so it sounds very good in the SVTs. But it still sounds really decent in this car. Now my dad's going to go back there and he's going to film it from the back and also the front from the engine, so you get some engine noise and some exhaust noise. So that's all I have to say about this car. As I said, it's a very good first car, and I'm going to score it on a 1 to 10 scale in some aspects. So, first we come to the daily category, the parent category, right? What would your parents want out of this car? So, this car, as I said, it's practical, cheap, easy to drive, and it does have a 5-star safety rating for front impacts. And, hey, your parents would like it for those reasons, as I said. So I would give this car an 8 out of 10 in terms of parenting. Then we move on to the fun category, what a car enthusiast like me would want from the car. As I showed you, it does sound pretty fruity. It does go kind of fast if you put on the auto drive on the 4-speed, or if you go for the 5-speed as well, that's pretty good as well. Or especially if you go for the SVT, it's even faster that way. The steering does have quite a nice feel to it. It handles very good because of the rear suspension, the control blade suspension. This car does have a lot of aftermarket parts for it, so if you wanted more performance for your money, you could strap on a turbo, a supercharger. There's all sorts of aftermarket parts for the Z-Tech, especially if you go for the SVT. Now, we move to the insurance sections. So, as I said before, insurance companies typically don't want you to drive anything at all. But the deal with this car is it's got cheaper insurance. So you just make sure to do this if you buy a car, okay? Make sure to put it under your parents' name if it's a more expensive car, so you could get cheaper insurance. And then put your name on the family beater, okay? But in my case, this is a cheap car, so I could just put it underneath my own name and get cheap insurance from it. It's somewhere like $300 to $400 a year for this car, and that's pretty good. So I give it a 10 out of 10 in terms of insurance. As I said before, the fun factor of this car gets a 7.5 or to 8 actually out of 10, and the family section, the parenting section, also gets an 8 out of 10, which ekes out to 26 out of 30 for my very first car review, and that's pretty good. So if you're looking for a cheap secondhand car for your first car, do check this thing out, the 2002 Ford Focus ZX5. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Comment anything you have, any concerns that you have with the video, so I can make better content. Do press that little bell icon after you press subscribe so you could stay notified for my next videos. There's some pretty good stuff coming, okay? Make sure to like it. And if you have any questions about your driver's license test, when you should get your license, what sort of car you should buy, if you want any car buying advice, make sure to contact me with the email. My email is m0m07focus@gmail.com, or just put them down in the comments, which is easier. I will respond to any comments within 2 days of the video going up. And that's about it for this first video. Again, my name is Mohammed Javed. Performance is my passion, and I will see you next time on The Young Driver.